Hey, good morning, and welcome to Getting Started. Look, I just want to get in and unpack a little bit about what we were talking about yesterday. And a little bit about what we were talking about yesterday is there were four reasons, and these four reasons explain a lot about how we get stuck financially, right? And then we discovered that actually there was a fifth reason. So what I'd like to do in what we're going to do today is just sort of go through that and unpack that just a little bit. And this podcast, Getting Started, my name is James Harnsberger, and what we're going to do is every day we're going to take a little bit more and sort of like explore, and on this little journey try to figure out what it is about a financial relationship that we have. When it works great. And when it's not working, it just kind of sucks, right? And so when we were talking yesterday, I gave the four reasons that we normally, or for the most part, we get stuck financially. And then we came up with the fifth reason. So what I'm going to do this morning is I'm going to unpack these, give you some examples, and then you can see how might some of these may relate to experiences that you've had. All right, let's dig in. The first reason that we gave was that we had an ineffective relationship with our money. Now, what do we mean by an ineffective relationship with our money? Well, we can simply say, whatever we're doing, it's not working, but that's not really specific enough to really hone in and give an example. Let me give you an example. Do you have a checking account? Most people would say, yeah. Do you have a credit card or number of credit cards? Most people would say, yeah. All right, well, then let me ask you a question. Every week or every month, do you have occasion to go through and reconcile your checking account and check everything that was on the debit cards and maybe the checks and the auto pays, just to go through it, make sure all the deposits were counted, all the money that went out, basic stuff, right? And the same thing with the credit card statement. Do you get your statements online and then print them out and save them so you have them for later in case you need them? And do you go through every charge on the statement to make, what's this thing for like this flight to Paris, right? I don't remember going to Paris. That actually happened. And so what we're talking about when we're talking about having an ineffective relationship with our money, we're talking about just some basic stuff like that, right? If we're not engaged and we're not reconciling our checking account, if we're not engaged and we're not reconciling our credit card statements, then what happens over a period of time, we sort of lose sight of where we are financially, at least in terms of measuring anything from those statements. We can go online every day and we can check the balances, but then you don't know what's in float. You don't know what hasn't been processed. And so what happens is these kinds of things sort of add to the angst and the anxiety. And so just asking the question, we're not making judgments. Again, we're just asking different questions. Do we reconcile our checking account? And do we reconcile and go through and review the credit card statement? These are things that demonstrate to the degree that we have them, whether or not our relationship with our money is being effective. One of the reasons we get stuck is partly because we don't do some of those things, right? The second item that was on my mentions yesterday in reasons that we get stuck was we avoid dealing with money issues. And I think I mentioned that everybody, me included, has one kind of money issue that we don't like dealing with, right? For some people, it might be the car payment. For some people, it might be the insurance payment. For some people, it might be reconciling the checking account. For some people, it might be the bill pay. They just don't like paying the bills, right? And so what happens is we get into a situation, and it's not that we procrastinate as much as we avoid. we avoid doing things that we don't like doing, right? And so what happens is it starts to pile up, and then pretty soon we're behind because we've got to play catch up and get it all caught up. So just ask yourself, is there something in your financial life that you avoid dealing with because you don't like dealing with it? Okay. And then I'm going to come back and give you a little bit of a hack. The third reason I think that we talked about is we either employ or use a method that has no defined outcome. In other words, whatever we're doing, there's no defined there to doing it. In other words, there's no, how do we know we're there? How do we know we're done when it's done? We're just doing stuff, right? And so when we approach anything dealing with finances, anything dealing with our money, a lot of times we're just going through motions in having a lot of activity. Good morning, Tina. Good morning, Ulysses. And what happens is when we get stuck in that cycle of activity, remember when I talked about sometimes we feel like we're the hamster on the wheel. We just don't want to be the dead hamster, right? And this activity is just what the way I refer to it is there's just a lot of motion, but nothing's going anywhere, right? We're just kind of spinning our wheels, right? It's an idiom, spinning our wheels. And so when we are using or employing methods that have no defined outcome, we're just doing stuff to be doing stuff. And it makes us feel like we're doing things. We are, but we're not getting anywhere doing it. And so as we go through these reasons that we get stuck and sort of unpack them a little bit more, I think what we start doing is getting specific, and then we can start asking some different questions. Oh, gee, that sounds like something I do. That might be why it's not working for me, right? The other example that I gave in the 4 examples, and then I'll talk about the 5th one, is that we get stuck financially because we could be totally disengaged. In other words, we're so disconnected with our finances. We're so disconnected with our money. We're so disconnected with the things that we don't like doing that deal with our money and bill paying, things like that, that we are just, to sum it up, we are just totally disengaged, right? Totally disengaged. We're not engaged in any part of it. And then that forces us or causes us to be in what we call the reaction mode. We're not being proactive, we're being reactive. And it's sort of like every time we turn around when we're in reaction mode, then, you know, we deal with the bills as they come in, maybe. And then when they're late, then we deal, and then it's just like it just never gets done, right? Again, these things that I'm discussing and bringing up, these 4 reasons, and then I'll get to the 5th that we talked about yesterday. What is interesting about every one of them, and all of them combined, is that they have a pattern to them. They have a pattern and a routine. And that's one of the things that this program is designed to do, is to identify these little signs that are really signs of a pattern, so that we can identify and at least understand why we get stuck financially, why we feel anxious, why we feel frustrated, and sometimes why we just feel pissed off, right? You ever feel pissed off? And so what happens is, if we don't have a method or a way to understand what we're doing, the frustration grows because we're just more confused. And it's not that we're confused, we just don't have anything that's guiding the process. Does that make sense? All right. And then when we were talking yesterday, and I think I mentioned that I was very grateful for Tina and for Takia, because it helped me to remember there was actually a 5th reason that we get stuck financially. And we talked about that. I believe I gave some examples, and that's when we settle for stuff, right? And nobody likes the feeling of settling for anything. I don't even think you like the feeling of settling a lawsuit, right? I mean, that's a different kind of settling, but it's kind of settling. And this whole thing about settling for stuff is unsettling. It's the actual opposite, because it leaves us feeling all of these negative emotions, and emotions are driving the train in all of this. Trust me, it's really all about the emotion, as we're going to discover March in the Get Started program. It's all going to come down to the emotions that we have with finances and with our money. When we are stuck and we're going through this process, and it's like you ever apply? I remember a couple of these instances in my life. You ever apply for a credit card and then you got denied, right? I think we've all at least had one card that we got denied. And you remember the feeling that you had, well, oh, damn it, right? Or whatever. And it's sort of like that feeling about settling. It leaves this sort of icky feeling. It's like, oh, my credit's not good enough, or you know what? And it might not even have anything to do, or very little to do, with your credit. It might have to do with a whole lot of other stuff. It's those kinds of feelings and those kinds of experiences that leave us with those emotional feelings. And every one of those that is negative has this little film, this little icky residue, if you will, that we kind of carry around. And you went to apply for a credit card and you were denied, and then you went to get the deal and you couldn't get the deal. And then we're having to settle for stuff, and we didn't want to settle. And so what happens is we start piling on one little experience after another. And pretty soon what we end up finding is we're carrying around this bucket of all this crap, right? Of all these feelings and experiences that, well, I got turned down for my credit, I must not be good enough, or whatever. It's just some negative bullshit goes through our mind, right? And what happens is that starts getting energy. We start giving it energy when we start paying attention to it. We start thinking about it. We start focusing. And what happens is that it starts this cycle, and then it deteriorates and actually creates the environment where the relationship with our money gets worse, not better. So it really is becoming this vicious cycle. You ever have a situation in your life financially where you thought things were just a freaking vicious cycle? Like, when am I going to get off this wheel, right? And that is a big sign that shit's just not working, right? And so as we're trying to figure out these reasons we get stuck and unpack them, and we're trying to figure out, well, what does it mean when you say that we might not have an ineffective relationship with our money? It's little things like that. And I remember at the time that, you know, it's like, I'll give you an example. You get these little cards like from Ralph's or Albertsons or whatever favorite market that you shop at. And they're like a little discount rewards card, right? So you go in and you're paying the check out to the cashier. And then the cashier says, do you have your rewards card? And then the person says either yes or no. And the person that says no is probably the one that goes home and is starting to complain about having financial issues, but yet they were just in line and had an opportunity to save some rewards and get a discount on their shopping, right? That's the kind of lack of congruence that I talk about. It's not a big deal, but it's one of 100,000 other little things like that develop these little patterns. I'll tell you a cool hack that we started about 5 or 6 years ago. When you go to the store, any store, and you got a rewards campaign or program, and at the bottom of the receipt, right where it says you saved $13.29, I actually come home and take $13.29 and put it in the jar. Like, you know, get a coin jar or whatever. I just actually put the money in there. We did that, and at the end of the first year, it was like over like $900. It was like a lot of cash. And I figured, well, if I saved it, then I'm setting it aside, right? I'm going to actually set it aside. And I thought that was just a cool shit little hack. Try it. It's like totally cool. The other thing, it's a pattern and a behavior. And there's no, again, I just want to keep emphasizing, none of this is about a judgment. We all do this shit. I have done all of this and thousands more, right? I'm just trying to point out, if you're wondering why we get stuck and we're frustrated and sometimes we're just freaking pissed off about our finances, I can tell you, and we're going to spend the month of March and I'm going to show you why. And then you're never going to have that feeling again, because that feeling sucks. But, getting ready for all of this and sort of laying it out, I'm giving you things to think about, because if we don't think about them, again, we're just ignoring them. And there may be some patterns and signs you want to consider looking at. That's all it's doing. You ever go to the gas station back in the day? I remember I used to go to the gas station, and it was just during that time where it's just like commission check to commission check or paycheck to pay, whatever. And it was like, okay, today I can put like $10 in gas, okay, $10. And then maybe a couple of days later, I put $12 or what, right? We've all done this, right? I did it for a long time. And then I got to thinking that, boy, when you start thinking about the time that I waste going to and from the gas station, like every 2 or 3 days, and I started just like digging into this stuff, and I noticed, just by coincidence, nothing's really coincidence, or serendipity for sure, I noticed, like in our area, they change the prices of the gas generally every Sunday. Generally. Now, if there's a big thing in the oil markets or whatever, they're going to run out there Wednesday and jack it up or whatever. But in general, I noticed and observed that they changed the prices on Sunday. So they're either going down or going up on Sunday. And generally, they're going down till Tuesday, and then they adjust them again. And there was this like pattern that I was observing. And I noticed when they changed them on Tuesday, they generally, most of the time, went up. And I thought, man, that is really interesting. So I just changed, and this has been like, I don't know how long ago, a long time ago, but I just changed the whole habit. And, when I go get gas, I fill it up and I'm done. And it generally will last about a week. And it's no more of this running back and forth to the gas. I counted the time. And I'm telling you, I wasted a lot of time going back and forth 3-4 times during the week. See, it's little shit like that you don't realize, that you develop patterns and habits that are working against you and eating up time, which is eating up money. It's wasting this, it's wasting that. And we just don't know, right? And all I'm doing is raising it as an issue for you to consider. Hey, yeah, I do shit like that. Yeah, maybe that's why I get frustrated, right? And then they're out of the gas, or they don't, it just goes on and on and on, blah, blah, blah. So when you're thinking about this shit, what I want to do is just make sure that you understand the whole thing is to question. The whole thing is to question the relationship involving our finances. And if you're feeling frustrated on any level, it's a sign that something's not working and it's holding you back. It could be resistance, or it could be a pattern that develops into a routine that converts into a habit. And pretty soon we're doing a lot of stuff that works against us, which is only reinforcing the fact that we can't move. It's not that you don't have enough willpower. It's like I said, the power belongs to will. It's his power, willpower. What we're talking about is moving forward from where you are to where you want to be. Sometimes 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time. You ever have something major happen in your life that was not like a good thing, and it was like, holy shit, I was not expecting that, right? And it's like, I got to deal with this, but I can only do, I'm going to just take it 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time. It's just too much shit, right? We all have that, right? Well, what happens in the area of our money and finance is, when we start putting shit off, when we start avoiding stuff, and we start reinforcing things that work against us and keep building that resistance, it gets more challenging for us to move. And then when a good opportunity to go leaps and bounds forward, or with the flywheel effect and get some momentum financially, when it presents itself, we're so stuck that we can't even see it, or we're so stuck that we suspect, oh, what's the catch, right? You ever have something offered to you and you thought to yourself, what's the catch? I know there's a catch. And you're probably right. 9 times out of 10, there's probably some screwy little catch, right? But what about the 1 time out of 10 that it's not? And then we miss an opportunity. And it's like we get this thing in our head that it's going to be like the same, but we keep doing the same shit, right? And so these are all signs that contribute to why we get frustrated, why we get stuck financially. It's not that we can't do any of this. We can all do this stuff. This stuff is not complicated, and we're all smart men and women, right? But what happens is that we've got some of these patterns. It's like a couple of the people that I've referred to. I mean, it's like the one client is like every 3 or 4 years, back they come, the bigger tax bill, bigger credit card problems. And it's just like, dude, it's like, it's like complaining about, you ever hear somebody say, oh, I got to put out the fire. I got fires to put out today. Dude, let me tell you something. Stop setting the fires in the morning and spending all afternoon putting them out. You're the firebug. Quit setting the fire, right? You're the one doing the problem. And we go around complaining about putting out fires when we're playing with matches and we're not doing anything about changing that, right? And so I give these to you to think about, to look at and see if there's something that you can relate with or relate to, and then apply that and say, there could be something there that is contributing to why I'm feeling this way. And when you add the dynamic of a spouse or a significant other, and what happens is it exponentially grows into a bigger deal, because you have 2 different personalities, 2 different money relationships, and then you create the third personality and money, his, hers, or his, hers, and theirs, right? And so what happens is, man, it just gets confusing, right? And then all of that stuff, all of that crap, that residual icky film shit, right, starts popping up, right? And it's not that the person's doing something right or wrong. It's just like we're just carrying all this other stuff. And, it's just like when we got, we tried to get the Visa card and we got denied, right? I remember the day that I got my Amex, my first Amex card. I got 3. I got 3 cards, 3 different, one for business, one for travel only, and then one personal. And man, I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, because I remember back in the day trying to get an Amex card, and it was just like, man, that was a hard card to get. And I just went to work and just, I just made sure I knew how my credit worked, and I monitor that shit all the time. And it's like, then it became effortless. It became easy. And it was like, man, that was such a cool feeling. And it really wasn't that big of a deal. But I mean, if you realized all the shit that goes into why and how you get a credit card and what goes into your credit report, and really understood that, you'd be monitoring that son of a bitch every day, because there's shit on there that shouldn't be on there. And people just don't know how these rules work. And then they get stuck paying higher interest. And it's just like, you ever have the feeling that the game's rigged, right? That the odds are against you, and that no matter if you're playing by the rules or not, the game's kind of rigged. I just hate that feeling. I hate the feeling thinking I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do, playing by the rules, and it's still rigged, right? Nobody likes that feeling. Well, it is kind of rigged. It's kind of set up to work against us in a way that we don't understand. And I'm going to get into that pretty deep in March, because I'm going to share some stuff with you that you probably had no idea about behavioral science and how it's used in marketing and all of these different things. That they hire these experts to do this shit. And when you really understand, you're hearing an ad or watching an ad on TV that, man, they're just hitting your button. That's all it is. And so what we've got to do is we've got to understand that money is a big deal in our life, financial security, all of our financial life and what that involves. And if we're even close to not being engaged, we're not going to have the kind of life and being happy and just doing shit that we like doing, right? What I would like to do is take you through the journey that I've gone through and take you through the journey that dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of clients have successfully gone through. Because I mean, I can't do a lot about counseling. I mean, all that other stuff. I don't know. I don't know, right? But I do know this. I do know that if our financial life is not working, your life doesn't have as much of that feeling of just, man, I can just crush it today, right? And so if we can help people understand that really unlocking that is not difficult, but we've got to really confront things and identify what's not working and then find out why so we can tweak that. It's not about fixing anything. It's about getting the things that we desire. And if you keep going through the cycle and settling for shit that you don't want, I mean, it's like, yes, I don't have anything against a Kia. Kia's a great car. But by God, if I'm at the point in my life and I want a Mercedes, don't try to sell me something like Kia or Impala or just stop. I want the Mercedes, right? That's my bigger point. And it's the same thing with the house. It's the same thing with everything else that we settle for. And then we don't realize it's just like that feeling that we get when we get the notice that we didn't get approved for the credit card. The Visa turned us down, right? You get that same bullshit feeling of ick. And then you start thinking that, pretty soon that your brain goes off the rail and starts making shit up about, this, that, and the other. And it's like, man, that affects our self-esteem. It affects everything that we think about and do. And I just think that sucks. And I think that if there's anything that we can do about that, that's what I want to do, because I think every day should be like, remember when you were a kid and all you did was just have fun, right? That's a cool thing I love kids. Kids are about one thing. They just want to have fun, right? And having fun, that's what's so cool about being a kid. Well, I like that. And I think every day should be fun. Whatever we're doing, it should be fun. But it ain't fun when you got bills. It ain't fun when you can't pay them. It ain't fun when you're upside down. None of that shit's fun, right? So let's figure that out, because it's going to work the same way for everybody, no matter who you are. But it's just a little bit of, I've got to sit down and really do that assessment. I got to really figure out what's not working and why, because I want it to work. And it's not enough to want it to work. You got to do whatever it takes to make it work. And that's the way it works. All right. That is enough for getting started today. I appreciate your time. I want everybody to have an awesome day. I'm going to give you one more time, and please forgive me that I got ahead of myself yesterday. The title of the book is The Richest Man in Babylon. One of the coolest books I ever read. And it's actually, if you go to the back and read, I think there's a thing in the back that talks. It's actually based on real scribes and scrolls that were found. So a lot of the stuff comes from actual historic record. And what was so cool about the story is it gave you such a different way to think about. And we go back to that keyword is really a power word. We've got keywords and power words, and some can be both. But accumulate or accumulation is such a powerful force. Once you understand the difference between an appreciating and depreciating asset, and once you understand the difference between saving and accumulating, I hate savings accounts and savings plans because they're never going to work. I like accumulation. I like accumulating financial reserves, cash reserves. It might be semantics, but I'm going to tell you it makes a big difference in your life when you pay yourself first and you're accumulating and you're adding more to what you already have in appreciating assets. And that's kind of a secret within the secret, if you will. And we'll talk about that in March. But I think the coolest thing about that book is that it is just the way this story unfolds. You can read it in a day twice, literally, you can. So once you're done reading it, go back and read it again. You're going to get something very important out of it the second time. It's one of the coolest things that I think that, and we should be giving those out in elementary school. to all the kids. All right. Have an awesome day. If you need me, hit me up, give me a text or an email. You'll get another notice. Today the notice that went out for the reminder of the orientation. I found a link. This gal's got a really cool site. You might want to check it out. But she actually had, I think, 200 of those financial idioms. So click on the link and check it out. It'll blow your mind how much. And we say this shit all the time. Stop saying stuff like that, because that's just reinforcing the negative. Let's just figure it out, and let's have the life that we desire financially. Let's make that work, and let's do this. All right, cool. Have an awesome day, and we'll see you on the flip side. Take care.